morning, Gerald. Let's learn how to do a cast on. Let's learn to knit. Okay, so welcome to Gerald and everyone who's joining us today in learning how to knit. This is pretty exciting for me. So thanks for joining along with us. Today we're going to learn how to do the long tail cast on. There are lots of different ways to cast on for your knitting. My favorite way is the long tail cast on. It's a pretty basic, generic, across the board type of cast on. So that's the one we're going to start with. And as we go through this series of videos, it's quite likely that I'll probably teach you another cast on, or I'll have my good friend Louise teach us how to do another type of cast on, because they serve all different kinds of purposes. So the long tail cast on is, like I said, a pretty basic good one. It provides a fairly stretchy edge, which is good when you're knitting. You don't want things to be super tight. So starting with a long tail cast on, we actually do not start at the very end of our yarn. We're actually going to start a little ways in. So a good rule of thumb is for every stitch that you need to count to cast on. So let's say we're going to cast on 10 stitches. You provide 1 inch of yarn per stitch and then add 10 inches to that number. So we're going to cast on 10 stitches. So we need to start with 10 inches of yarn for the cast on and 10 inches of extra yarn for the tail at the end. So we need 20 inches of yarn. So because this is just a tutorial, I'm going to estimate 20 inches of yarn. I don't think I need to measure it out. So here's my end, and I'm going to come to what I think is about 20 inches. And here comes the fun. So I've got 2 different kinds of needle tips here with me today to do my cast on. I have a straight, and I found one of my mother-in-law's old ones. So it's a nice white color. I think that should hopefully show up quite well with the pink yarn. Of course, I'm doing this on a white table, aren't I? So it should still, with my fingers in the way, you should still be able to see it. And then I also have a metal circular. So I'm going to do a cast on both. Starting with the straight needle. You've got the one end of the yarn, so the end of the yarn is going to be to your left. The working yarn, or the yarn that is still attached to your ball, is to the right. You are going to lay the end of the yarn over your thumb and then over your index finger. So that is towards the working yarn. I'm going to put the ball of yarn in the picture so you can see. So here's the working yarn. The end of the yarn is on my left, and in the middle it's sitting over top of my 2 fingers like that. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to lift our fingers up, and you're going to see the yarn is going to sit like this in your hand. So see how this part of the yarn is on this side of your 3 fingers? It's going around your index finger and around your thumb. And I've got 2 parts of the yarn inside my hand. This is the working yarn, and this is the end. And then what you're going to do is you're going to bring your hand, these 3 fingers, and close them into your palm. So there you've got a little loop of yarn that sits around your thumb and around your index finger. And what we're going to do is we're going to just tighten that up so it's not too loose. We want just nice even tension on this, not too tight, not too loose, but enough so that you can just give this a little tug and it feels secure. Okay? So then we're going to take our needle. We're going to insert the needle underneath that loop like that. You're going to take your right hand index finger and you're going to trap the yarn on top of the needle with your index finger. So now you're attached, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to make a slingshot maneuver, and you're going to gently pull that yarn back. So you're holding onto it with your index finger, and it's still trapped around those your index finger and your thumb of the other hand. Now what you're going to do, here's where things become interesting. So I'm going to go nice and slow. You're going to go over top and under the loop that's at your thumb. See how it creates that little loop? I'm going to open it back up again so you can see. If I take it to the left, I create a loop around my thumb. I'm going to take my needle tip and I'm going to scoop into that loop like that. You're going to keep the loop on your thumb. Don't remove it from your thumb yet. You've scooped it under your thumb. Bring the needle tip back to the center. Now you're going to go to the right, over top of that other yarn, and you're going to scoop over the top of the right hand loop and scoop underneath. Okay, see? Things get a little tricky. Now I'm back to the middle. Okay, can you still see where I am? I'm going to go through this gigantic loop where my thumb is, and I'm going to release that loop off my thumb, and I'm going to tighten it up. And I now have 2 stitches, 2 cast-on stitches on my needle. So let's do it again. Working yarn, end. Make the loop around your 2 fingers, thumb and index finger. Trap those 2 other pieces of yarn in the palm of your hand. 3 fingers, trap, and then bring it up. Needle inside, trap the yarn with your index finger of your right hand. Pull it back to create a slingshot. Over and scoop the left, over and scoop the right, and then the needle goes through the middle of the thumb loop and the thumb releases the yarn. Now I've got 2 stitches on my needle. I'm going to make a 3rd. Your yarn is already attached to the needle, so simply put your index finger on those 2 stitches that are on the needle, pull back, and you've got your slingshot ready to go. Over the top of the left and scoop. Over the top of the right and scoop. Now, through the thumb again, release the thumb loop and tighten. Let's do it again. Slingshot, over the left and scoop, over the right and scoop. Through the middle of the thumb loop, release the thumb loop and tighten. Now, the tension that is on the needle here you should be able to move these stitches easily. Now, they shouldn't just slide off if you tip your needle. If they just fall right off your needle, they're too loose. If you can't move them or they squeak, they're too tight. So what you want to do is you just take them out and you practice again. If they're too tight, just loosen up that bit that you pull when you tighten them up at the end. Don't yank them so that this is too tight. If it's too loose, you're just going to have to try and figure out just a little bit more pressure here when you tighten up the thing, and it should work. A couple other potential problems that might happen when you do what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate what I think is probably a pretty common error. So I've scooped under the left, I've scooped over the right, and then I've come through. Now, do you see what happens if you don't come quite through, if you don't release that thumb loop on the right side? See how my needle tip is on the right hand side of the yarn and not on the left hand side of that thumb loop? If I release my thumb now and pull, I have an extra loop here, and you can see something is wrong. So if that happens, just pull that last stitch off, get your slingshot back, and just do it again. Over the left and scoop, over the right and scoop and through. And then the thumb loop comes back over, twist the thumb off, and tighten the stitch. Slingshot, over the left, over the right, and through, and tighten. After a while, it becomes a rhythm. Slingshot, over the right, over the left and through, over the right and through, and then through the thumb loop and off. Okay, so that's the straight needle. Take those off. Yarn is forgiving. You can do this a million gajillion times. Here's my circular needle. So as you can see, my needle tip is a lot shorter and I'm connected to the cable. The cable is not an issue at all. You simply ignore it. You hold this needle exactly the same way as you would hold a straight needle, and you simply ignore the cable. Here's my slingshot. I've got my loop of yarn is ready on my hand. Close my fingers. Needle tip, index finger is on holding the yarn. Pull it back, over and under and through. Tighten. Slingshot, over and under and through, and tighten. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Now it's up to you to practice and practice and practice and practice. And don't forget, mistakes are how we learn. So good luck. If you have any problems or any questions, leave me a message below. And I will see you on Thursday to learn the knit stitch. So until then, practice your cast on lots and lots and lots. Happy knitting, guys.